Acidorian for Tenable Network Security. Today I'm going to show you how to configure Hydra for usage with Nessus. Now, some of you may be wondering why you would want to use a third-party tool such as Hydra in conjunction with Nessus in order to test your password accounts and usernames and password combinations. Nessus by default has a ton of plugins actually built in that will test for default usernames and passwords. Hydra gives you the ability to upload a custom password dictionary and a custom username dictionary as well. And it'll run that alongside of Nessus and has some nice integration, which I'll show you. Let's start by looking at our policy. I've created a policy here called password checking. So when I go into this policy, you can see I've disabled some of the port scanners, and I'm going to do a very specific scan geared towards finding default usernames and passwords, and also uploading custom username and custom password dictionaries. So let's go into the plugin selection. Now, my plugin selection is very, very customized here. I searched for the word account to kind of get started on my plugin selection. A lot of the plugins, probably 95 or more % of them, that have to do with finding default usernames and passwords contain the word account in the title. So that was a pretty good start. And I mean, I went through and I looked at all of the plugins that were being enabled here, and it looked like several of them were. One of the larger ones here is Gain a Shell Remotely, Windows User Management. Let's see, default Unix accounts was the big one too. That's got tons of stuff in there for Unix and Linux to find default accounts. So that's the big one. It looks for accounts that don't have a password. So those are plugins that are built in. Now I also had to enable a bunch of other stuff as well. I had to enable settings, and I had to go in and in the brute force attacks, I had to enable that entire family to get all of the Hydra plugins. So now we'll go off to our preferences. So that's our plugin selection. We'll go off to our preferences and we'll hit global variable settings. Now, since I enabled plugins in the CGI abuses and CGI abuses cross-site scripting families, I want to make sure that I enable CGI scanning, because that will actually run the plugins that I selected in those families. I also want to enable thorough tests, which has to be enabled in order to run Hydra. I'll then go down to Hydra in my Nasal wrapper options, and we'll talk a little bit about how I got Hydra to work and get this plugin to show up. I check the box that says always enable Hydra. Now I go in here and I uploaded a username list and a password file. Now the username list I created by hand. I just put a few entries in there. In fact, we can go take a look at what those are. So if I dump onto the command line, I only put 3 usernames in there. I suggest that you keep it small. Now, I also have the 500 worst passwords here. I picked up this file from skullsecurity.org, and it's a great compilation of default passwords. There are some explicit words in there, so I won't actually display the contents of the file on the screen. So if you're sensitive to that, be aware that they're in there. But I had really great success running it against my test machine with this password dictionary. I actually found the passwords that I had set manually that were contained in this dictionary. So I uploaded that into Nessus. Now I changed my number of parallel tasks to 4. I like to lower the Hydra settings for that, because Hydra starts to act a little funny if you increase that beyond 4. I also told Nessus to try empty passwords and try the login as the password. As soon as Hydra finds a match, I tell it to exit, otherwise it can add a lot of time to your scan. And also, any accounts found by other plugins within Nessus get appended to the logins file used by Hydra. So, using this policy, I initiated a scan. We can take a look at my most recent attempt here, which went really, really well. I scanned one of my test systems, and for the FTP account, Nessus itself found a pro FTP new line character overflow vulnerability, but you see here Hydra also found a default account. So it tells you information about it, and it says, hey, I found that the username was manager and the password was 12345. Hydra also found on this particular host the SSH. So Nessus has a plugin that says, hey, if the root user account, if the password's set to TOOR or root spelled backwards, as a plugin for that. Hydra also went in and found that, hey, there's another username called manager, and it has a password of 12345. And you can see these results show up as severity high inside of my report. And let's see, the last thing I wanted to cover was actually getting Hydra working. You need to make sure that Hydra is in your path. And you can see I've got the Hydra source code here. The latest version is 5.8. I had to make some changes, which I will publish most likely in the discussions portal. I had to make some changes as to how Hydra was compiled on the system and get certain modules to work. So again, you have to do a little massaging, make sure that Hydra's in your path, and then it will work with Nessus, so you can do custom username and password dictionaries using Hydra and integrate it into your Nessus scans. That concludes this video edition of the Tenable Network Security. Thanks, and we'll see everyone on the next video episode.